This is corned beef Nash.
We'll get the roughest and the toughest initiation we can find. We'll start a car club.
I brought it in about, I'd say 10 hours ago. 10 hours in the shop. I haven't worked straight. This is Saturday. Came in on a Saturday. Work on my own stuff. Kind of a first few things on how I proceed to begin a vehicle. Obviously, experience lets you know what you need to keep and what you don't. You know, that helps a lot when I'm doing a project like this real quickly, you know. So the stuff for myself I got to get done real quick. So the easy part about that is it's my car, so I know the plan. I have this plan in my head for this car, and I just have a way of visualizing every single aspect of this build. Like, I know exactly what I'm gonna do on every part of it. Like, I don't need to research anything. I don't need to look up anything. I know what I want. I know what I'm gonna need as far as all the parts go, which is a talent of mine, and also it's, you know, you cure it over time. So things that I know I need on this car that will be hard to find. One is my window seals. The first thing I'm gonna do on this is I'm gonna polish this trim before I take it out, because the car holds it on there, and so it's a lot easier than later trying to polish this on your lap. So what I do is I use my polishers and I just do this right on the car. That's the first piece I need, is want to make sure I can find these window seals before I cut these windows out, you know, and then we can go from there. I found a place that has it, they say, but I haven't heard back from him yet, so I'm not going to touch it. Wing window seals, another big one. Window tracks and stuff aren't that big of a deal. Both these windows roll up and down. Front one, same deal. This is a rubber trim with the stainless, so there's sometimes two options, with and without, depending on what package you got with your car or whatever in the heck. Anyways, so I have to make sure that I get one with, because I really like that trim. I always like the trim around the windshield back window. If you can get it with stainless, get it with stainless, because most cars had that option. Next thing I did was strip the drivetrain out of this thing. We got subframe unbolts, like a, you know, 240SX or a Camaro or whatever, 350Z. It just unbolts out, motor and stuff comes out. Leaf spring perches, or coil spring perches, unbolted off of there. I'm actually going to use those coil spring perches on my 8.8 that I got from Jay. And so, because it has the correct spring rate for the weight of the vehicle, and I'm not changing any of that, I'll probably just cut the spring, get a lower shock for it. I'll show you how I'm doing that later. I might not, who knows. I'm putting in a new Mustang 2. The thing about this is this car's a unibody. So putting in a frame, you can't just weld this in right here. I've been through this before on different cars where it's a unibody and I'm putting a frame into it, because we're switching to a V8 or instead of a 4-cylinder out of some little Volvo or old Mercedes or something. Anyways, but I want this frame to go back and connect to the rear axle. So I want my front suspension tied to my rear suspension by this new frame. And then I'm going to integrate it into the unibody. And so it won't be removable like a traditional dropout frame. It will still be a unibody, but I just will have a more structured piece to mat front and rear, just for a billion different reasons. But number one, it's the only way to do this. Front suspension connects to 4-link, connects to rear end, panhard bar, parallel 4-bar, if you know what all that jargon is. It has a sway bar on the rear end. I might try to utilize it on that 8.8. We'll have 4-wheel disc brake, rack and pinion, coil springs all the way around, so it'll be pretty modern. Okay, so what I did was I kind of stepped way back while the car was up in the air and kind of lined up the rear diff to kind of where I thought it was, and then adjusted it as it come down. But you can see there's stuff that needs to come out of the way, like that lower mount, but that's what we kind of are doing here. Just kind of doing a test fit, because those plans that I talked about that I made are probably all wrong and probably need to change. So after I've already told you that I have it all planned out in my head, we'll see how many times that doesn't work out. So something like that. And I'm not going to put a tape measure on it or anything. We're just going to kind of try to figure out something what we got to do here. We're going to take this mount off. You can see how these springs will come down onto it. I think these bolts might be too tight. The axle housing will probably be bigger. So I'm guessing I need to cut them off here, but that's also my shock mount. So I'll need to weld this into the cup, and then I'll just weld the cup onto the axle housing when I got it set. And I think those will work really awesome. That's what I was talking about with the, I'm gonna probably leave those. Well, I'm sure I'm gonna leave those. And that's integrated into the body. And like I said, I'm taking this unibody and going with the full frame, but my forelink is gonna be connected to the frame under here. And then all this is doing is your suspension. Once again, something like a import, this kind of area would be bolted into the car, but then the spring goes up into just the sheet metal body. And then the only thing that the frame does back here is really hold my bumper and some of my beer. So I really only need my frame to go from the forelink forward, but I want to securely tie it in. If that means I need to run a whole rail up over this, that's what I'll do, but I'm not thinking I will. I'm thinking I'll be able to stub it off and go into its kind of torque box, heavy duty area where you jack it up and all that. That's a lot thicker metal in here. It's like a 16 gauge or something, and it has a lot more structure in these four corners of this car, like a Mustang. This will let me figure out, kind of get a look at this and figure out kind of what we're doing here, and then where I can put the forelink, because where I can put the forelink bars, I want it to go in to the rest of my rails. So that means I have to be wide enough at the right width to put those forelink bars in there. That might be straight off those rails. I might have to kick them out, but I need to get the Ford putting a shock in the middle of a rear diff. That's so Ford. So get a forelink kind of mocked up here and kind of see where we're gonna be. This is the forelink that I got from Chassis Tech, and they said they're heavy duty. And holy cow, they weren't kidding. This thing is too overkill. These Heim joints are just humongo. I mean, that's my mini tape measure. But, I mean, this is just a huge stuff. I don't even really want something this heavy duty on it. I mean, that's a lot bigger than I usually use. It's probably not DOM. Man, I would trust this at 1,000 horsepower. And we have like 150 in our old small block. I guess we'll use it. I mean, it's just, I paid $300 for this, like $350 for this from Chassis Tech. It's just massively overkill. Like I would expect to pay like $1,000, $2,000 for this thing. It was $350. It's just a crazy awesome deal, but they're just humongous. I'm trying to give you a reference there with my hand. And I have a big stupid hand. Remember when we were talking about going according to plan? This is not according to plan. And right off the bat, or not according to plan. You're being recorded.
I'm being recorded. Uh-oh, this is bad.
So I got, dude, you got 1 second?
I do.
I got this forelink from Chassis Tech, which you're familiar with Chassis Tech. It's made in Arizona, but it's always cheaper, right?
Yeah.
For however way they do that. Anyway, so I order the heavy duty forelink kit, right? Because, you know, I don't want a 1/2 inch Heim forelink, right?
Yeah.
But I get this thing, dude, it is burly. Like the bolts on it are, I need 1.5 inch socket.
So it's probably like a 7/8 bolt?
It's like a 1 inch Heim.
Holy shit.
The Heims are measured by the bolt going through it, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, it's a 1 inch Heim.
Wow.
Right? And I've got kits. I've got this kit before and I thought I was getting the same one, and it was like it didn't hold up on Chris's drag truck.
Yeah.
But this, dude, it looks like something off a backhoe.
That's incredible.
For 350 bucks. Yeah, you know, I figured they'll get used someday, and I'm still happy with the price. It's just,
Yeah.
it's not $600 that needed to go in that direction.
Yeah.
All right, I'm just gonna order a new kit. This is too much. All right, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Have fun.
All right, bye. Sometimes you gotta call a buddy, you know? And Jared's good enough in the know for sure. So, was hoping to get that in today, and that means I have to wait until the freaking other 4-link comes in. I don't think I got any on the shelf. I know I don't. Okay, so what I decided to do with our massive 4-link is I ordered one for me and Mr. Rubin that is the same length as this, but it's using smaller heims, smaller bolts. This is just too big. This is just too overkill, which really doesn't hurt anything, but I don't like welding thicker metal to thinner metal. I'm using 3/16, so I'd like to weld 3/16 onto it, you know. I just ordered the 2 new kits, and we'll just see if somebody else wants these. However, since it is the same length, I can use it to mock it up. It is going to be different in and out. It's probably going to be different length, but I can get into the ballpark with this and know where I'm going to be mounting things, which is what we need to figure out. And it'll even let me put in my rails. So it's not really even going to slow me down much. So hopefully we get those in the next couple of days. They're coming out of Cali, so we'll continue mocking this up. Mockumentary. Okay, so I cut 2 chunks of rail here, and so the reason I know the length that I'm making those, because I want to tuck them into the body here. I want the 4-link to be that wide. That's kind of how wide the shocks are and the springs are, so it'll make the car more stable to be linked up where it's going vertically into the car to give it that cushion, you know. So what this will do is create less vibration when you're driving. That's 55.5 inches long, which is from here to here. This measures 48 inches across here, which is how wide the inside of the rail needs to be to put the links in that area. So that's 48 inches across, that's 48 inches across center to center, or outside to outside, whatever. Ends up on this bracket, because it sticks in, you know, that welds onto the inside of the frame. So I want the inside of the frame to keep these parallel to the area I want. So we're 48 inches across to the inside of these rails. I want to take these 2 rails inside here, so I measure 48 inches to the inside. So the inside of my rail, this rail down here, is going to come kind of right into that spot. And I'll probably cut a little triangle out of here so the rail will actually slide up in here. We'll have a plate here. Actually, I'm going to cut the rail to this. We'll have a plate on here. I'll pre-weld this to the plate, and then I'll stick the plate and the rail in here, and that'll be even. We know that's even with the car. What I decided to do was make kind of a 3D showing of where this box rail is going to go. It's 2 inches by 3 inches, so I just kind of measured that out and then put screw and like a little self-tapper and this wire on it. The ones that are on that hit the floor, you can mark out where this rail is going to go into the floor. And so the rail is going to actually protrude into the floor in that area. You can see where it's going to cut through the little rail there, and so you can just do a nice cut there, and then you can weld this hat channel back into the rail, which helps out everything. We're going to end up doing the same thing here right on this little end. I didn't mark that one out actually. I got my plates. They're just tacked because I'm going to pull them back out. And then you can see I cut a little slot out of the top there. That way, when this is all in there, I can weld down from the inside of the car and get that top weld, because there's nothing really to weld to on this outside. I just be welding it to the floor, not the box rail. So I want to weld it to the box rail and the floor. And so I'll be able to do that in those cuts that I made. So tack those in. I got my area cut out where the box tube would hit the floor. And I went ahead and went to the edge there, just because you're not just going to box over the top of it. It's just going to be a new piece that comes out and down or something like that. Now I'm going to test fit the rail in here. I'm sure I'm going to have to trim this a little bit more. And got my rails here cut to size. I got my other plates for the other side. I like to always cut both sides at the same time. Okay, day has turned to night, but I got my little rails in. And so this is kind of like a subframe connector, or you know, something just to tie our front guy into the car. So we're still a little ways away from that. What we got to do is get from here, which is up in that area, down to here. So there'll be two more rails, one there, one there. That will tie all these together. But it worked out pretty good. There's you know, our plate here, our fish plate here, and I was able to weld those onto the rails before I welded it into the car. Then I'll go back and clean up these and get them all tied together. There's still a question of how much floor I'm replacing on this with the rust. So that was a big deal on being able to use a V8 modern suspension, and this is getting something that we can tie it all together with. I ordered my 4-link, which will be somewhere, the front of it will be right about there, and that'll come back to our axle here. At any rate, it was most definitely enough progress for today, and a lot of things engineered and figured out.
We'll get the roughest and the toughest initiation week.